Fact 1. The Soviet Union and the United States were allies in World War II. The two countries had a common enemy in Nazi Germany, which was trying to take over Europe. In 1943, they also signed another agreement with the goal of creating a post-war world without fascism or Nazism. It was called the Declaration of the United Nations and had 6 guiding principles. 1. All members pledge their support to the purposes of the organization. 2. Members shall grant full faith and credit to one another in their international relations. 3. The treatment of prisoners, for example captured enemy combatants, being held in one's territory is regulated by common international norms. 4. Members shall refrain from joining any military alliance which is directed against another member. 5. Members shall give other members the means of verifying their compliance with the provisions of this declaration. 6. All members agree to conform their behavior and policies to the purposes, principles, norms, and rules of international law in both their international relations and internal affairs. The United Nations was founded on October 24, 1945, following ratification of the Charter of the United Nations in San Francisco on June 26, 1945. The UN Charter was conceived in compromise and its drafting process lasted 2 years. Fact 2. The Soviet Union and China had a rocky relationship from the start. The two countries were engaged in the Sino-Soviet split. And Mao denounced both Soviet leader Joseph Stalin and Soviet ideology. In 1950, Mao Zedong's People's Volunteer Army entered Korea to fight alongside North Korea against American forces in what became known as the Korean War. In the decade that followed, China underwent economic and social reforms under Mao's leadership. In 1957, China became a member of the United Nations. The following year, China also joined the Soviet-led Warsaw Pact as an observer state. Mao also sought to revitalize China's economy through a series of economic readjustments and political campaigns, collectively known as the Great Leap Forward movement. In the meantime, Mao's government continued to persecute and execute his critics in the CCP and elsewhere. Throughout this period, he maintained an intense rivalry with Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. In 1957, China and the Soviet Union established diplomatic relations. He led a campaign in the late 1950s which was intended to create rural communes and eliminate private ownership over farmland. In the process, China's agricultural sector suffered from neglect and the movement was halted by Deng Xiaoping in 1959. After Mao's death in 1976, power passed to his designated successor Hua Guifeng. The movement was revived and went into high gear after Deng's 1978 economic reforms. At that time, agricultural collectivization became known as the Second Revolution because of the speed at which it occurred. Fact 3. Russia was left devastated after World War II. The country was left with a depleted workforce and an economy that was in shambles. The Soviet Union had to rebuild from the ground up. They had to rebuild their industries and infrastructure, which took years of hard work. As a result, the Cold War and the Soviet Union's involvement in it began. The USSR was determined to maintain its position in the Cold War and was not prepared for the disintegration of its empire. The USSR relied on a policy of military expansion in order to keep up with the United States and its allies. A key player in the Soviet-US rivalry was China. In 1949, Mao Zedong led the People's Republic of China, which had created its own brand of communism that differed from that of Russia. Realizing they had a new power rivaling them, both Russia and America pressured China into a diplomatic alliance. The United States made China back off of Vietnam and Russia offered to help China in the Korean War. This alliance was broken when Mao ordered Chinese forces to enter Tibet in 1959. Which led America and Europe to break with the Soviet Union and support the Dalai Lama. In 1959, Kim Il-sung invaded Tibet through North Korea to create an alliance with Mao. These two countries' alliance was broken when Mao ordered Chinese forces to enter Tibet in 1965. After the death of Kim Il-sung in late 1994, his son Kim Jong-il was named as the next leader of North Korea. The DPRK leader is also likely to say that the United States destroyed North Korea and then it had to turn to Japan. Fact 4. East Germany, a communist country ruled by the Soviet Union during the Cold War, was established in 1949. The two Germanys were at odds with each other and were not connected physically. East Germany included what used to be West Berlin and East Berlin. The year 1938 was when Germany invaded Poland and World War II started. West Germany was established in 1949. The two Germanys were at the time divided into East and West Berlin. The Soviet Union, a communist country ruled by the Soviets, was established in 1922. D-Day landings occurred in 1944. The year 1944 was when World War II ended and the first atomic bombs were dropped. Fact 5. West Germany was also a communist country ruled by the United States and their allies. This was because of the Potsdam Agreement. The agreement, which was signed in 1945, stated that the U.S. and its allies would take control of West Germany until it had been democratically established. However, shockingly, after the agreement was signed, the U.S. helped to set up a communist dictatorship in West Germany. Many people find this disappointing because they thought that the Nazis were defeated and would not come back again. However, it was soon discovered that they had been reborn as communists. The Soviet Union and its allies decided to divide Germany into 4 zones of occupation. The US, France, the UK and the USSR each occupied most of the country. The USSR was allowed to control East Germany along with other Eastern European countries. West Germany was divided into 2 parts, the US zone which included the capital Berlin, and a French zone which included West Berlin. The Allied powers had originally planned to occupy Germany for the duration of the war and establish a 4-power government in Berlin. However, by the Potsdam Conference in July 1945, it was decided that this policy would not be pursued due to opposition from other countries. As an alternative, it was decided that occupation zones would be created in Germany but with some zones excluded, such as Berlin. This arrangement created a situation in which Germany was divided into Allied zones of occupation with the capital, and later city. The Berlin Wall was erected in 1961 and officially became a symbol of the Cold War. Its construction resulted in a major crisis of confidence between East and West Germany. In 1989, the Berlin Wall came down following a wave of popular protests. East Germany formally held elections in 1990 and its economy eventually began to grow at a rapid rate. The Soviet Union was dissolved in 1991, resulting in the birth of 15 separate nations. 2 new countries, Belarus and Ukraine, were formed from parts of the former Soviet republics of Belarus and Ukraine, which received independence following referendums boycotted by many residents. Stay tuned for part 2 of the secrets of 10 interesting facts about the Cold War, and don't forget subscribe as well.